from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening, America. Good evening, Northern Virginia. I am Mark Levine. To my left is Cesar del Aguilar. To my right is Jeff Barnett. You've got a three-way Inside Scoop host going because we have a lot of news. We have an election tomorrow, and I hope you're getting out and going to vote. Lots to talk about, gentlemen, right here in Northern Virginia and across the United States. We've got nationally, the Senate is in play. And it doesn't look great for Democrats. It's going to be tough. Are we going to make it, Cesar?
You know what? I'm a little bit worried tonight, but I think overall, depending on a couple things, if the enthusiasm gets up and if turnout happens the way we need to, I think we'll be okay.
Now, Jeff, Democrats have this unfortunate problem of often not voting in midterms. We seem to do great in presidential years, at least lately, but our last really bad election year was 2010, 4 years ago. Why do you think Democrats have this trouble getting out on midterms?
I think that it's all messaging. I think that Democrats primarily are out voting for a message in a particular candidate. There's a great piece by Steve Pearlstein in Sunday's Post, I don't know if you saw it, about the lack of a Democratic brand. And I think that lack of an economic brand, when the economy is number one on people's mind, that kind of drives Democrats less towards an issue-oriented campaign and more towards a personality-oriented campaign. And that is an extremely expensive campaign to run, and it runs best in a presidential year.
Okay, but here's what I don't understand, Cesar. The unemployment rate is below 6%. Mm-hmm. The stock market hit record highs today.
Gas prices
are at record lows. Obviously, the gross domestic product is growing 3 or 4%. The biggest complaint people have had is about income inequality, but even the most recent statistics show consumer sentiment is up and even incomes across the board are up. If anyone's getting in the way of income inequality, it's the Republicans, right?
Well, I think you're going to ask, what is the message, or what is the winning message?
Why aren't people getting out and voting for this?
Well, they are.
Okay, and they will tomorrow. You're going to get out and vote.
But here's the thing. Republicans do, because they do, quite frankly, a better job of connecting with the voter on emotional issues. What's the big issue out there? The Ebola scare, right?
Two people in the United States of America got
Doesn't
Ebola.
Doesn't matter.
10,000 were killed by guns, 30,000 by cars.
Doesn't matter.
2 not killed, but 2 got Ebola. 1's cured now, by the way.
The average voter is probably not aware of some of those realities. The average voter is getting bombarded with all this noise about the death potential that they face on a daily basis.
Do you know where the 2 got Ebola, by the way? They got it in Dallas, Texas, in a red state run by a conservative governor who maybe didn't protect the people so much. But I still think it's tiny. It's negligible news.
Look, you guys are both in sales. And
can you tell?
a prime theme in sales is the customer doesn't wants to first know that you care before they care what you know.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about democratic values.
Okay. But going back to what Cesar was saying, and I think Cesar is exactly right, but I think it's a little bit more than that. Median income for households from 2000 to now is down 10%. Mm-hmm. So this image that we have of all moving up the chain over time, we haven't seen it. People haven't seen it. So
only in the most recent survey, the median income is up the last 6 months or so. But
over the past since 2000, that's 14 years.
That's true.
And I could probably go back before that, but at least for that time, last 14 years, it's trending down 10%, and it's also down in Virginia. So.
But here's my question: when you look at Democratic policies versus Republican policies, who's helping the median family more? If anything, Barack Obama tried to do a greater stimulus package, tried to give more to our infrastructure, tried to help teachers, tried to do tax cuts. for working class people, and Republicans said no, 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 no. I mean, even the health care program helps middle income working class people, and in Virginia at least the Republicans have stopped that. So to the extent that people are not as wealthy or doing as well as they should have, it seems to me there's a clear party to blame, and it's not the Democrats.
Well, but the Republicans will say, we'll give you a very clear economic strategy.
Do nothing?
Lower taxes and less government, and we'll be fine.
But they only want lower taxes on the super wealthy.
But try to tell me in 20 words or less what the economic strategy is for the Democratic Party.
That's right. That's where we fail.
And in this environment, with median income going down, and there's another factor there too. Some people call it job fear. If you have a job today, great. But if you were to lose your job today, for many, many people, where in the heck would you find another one? That's the problem. You got to Winchester, you got Leesburg, you got Prince William County. A lot of people, there's only one place to work. If that place is closed, if I lose that place, I'm out of luck.
Okay, fair enough, Jeff, but President Obama and the Democrats have done jobs plan after jobs plan after jobs plan, and they all die in the House. Do people not know this out in the heartland? I guess they don't.
They do not know this.
Well, you should know this.
They do not.
And by the way, if you want to call in and challenge anything we're saying, I encourage you to do so. Just give us a call at 571-749-1166.
And we don't know, or they don't know it because either we don't do a good enough job as Democrats to explain the value of our positions or views, or we're just not getting through somehow through all the noise. I'm not sure which it is, but I know we at least as Democrats need to take responsibility, ultimately accountability, for getting the right message to the people. And we just don't do a good job.
So let's bring it home to the elections that are occurring tomorrow. In Virginia, let's start with statewide. We have the Senate race between Senator Mark Warner, well-loved person in Virginia, governor. People seem to think he did a very good job. Running against Ed Gillespie, former chair of the Republican Party, a lobbyist. What are the issues that people are looking at? Because I haven't heard much about issues in this race.
Yeah, again, I think this goes back to what Jeff said earlier. I think for people in different parts of the state, certainly up here it's jobs, certainly it's the transportation issue. You go further down, it's probably something completely different for them. Mark Warner has always been kind of the centrist, even amongst Democrats.
Right.
But we will support
Moderate
him.
Democrats.
Yeah, and he will win.
Well, he will win. He's ahead in the polls, but it's closer than we've become accustomed to. The latest poll I showed 4-point margin. That's pretty close.
Yeah, I saw 7 points, but that's but anyway, single digits for Mark Warner.
Yeah. Very popular senator.
If you were to come up with a poster child for being bipartisan in the U.S. Senate, I mean,
he's someone who works across the aisle and makes deals with Republicans.
Right, and has tried to again and again and again, had that reputation here in Virginia. On guns, for example, a lot of liberals don't like his gun stance. So Mark Warner has tried, and for him to be attacked as being really, the deciding vote for Obamacare is kind of the bumper sticker that Mr. Gillespie uses has been very effective.
His opponent, Gillespie, he's the former chair of the Republican Party, so he represents that sort of right-wing conservative views. He was a George W. Bush advisor, a lobbyist for various big money interests.
Enron.
For Enron, right, a big oil company that failed miserably and took a lot of taxpayer money.
Yeah, people don't get that message from Democrats. What they get, what Republicans and other independent voters get is Mark Warner loves the president. President's down right now, so they're attaching him to the president. That's why his numbers are down.
Or it's possible that they get the message, but they just don't hear it. The message is out there. The man is, Gillespie is a lobbyist. He's highly partisan. And if you were to ask anybody, should Congress have more highly partisan lobbyists in it?
Right.
They'd say no. But here's the situation. Because Gillespie has talked about an economic strategy for these people whose economic livelihood is at risk to themselves.
Yeah.
And Mr. Warner has been allied simply with President Obama and Obamacare, and not with really a strategy.
Here's the thing, though, that I don't understand. Democrats running away from the Affordable Care Act, from Obamacare, and maybe it's the name, the pejorative name, Obamacare. But I look at a place like Kentucky in the race with Mitch McConnell.
Right.
Now, Virginia is one of those states where the Republican legislature has refused to allow any poor or middle-class people to get health care. It's free. The federal government's providing it. It costs nothing. Thousands of Virginians could take advantage of it. And the Republican legislature said, no, we don't want your free money. We'd rather have people be sick and die in Virginia, even though it costs nothing. So it's very hard for Virginians to understand the benefits they could get. But in Kentucky, a more conservative state than Virginia. Let's face it, Virginia's a bluish, purplish state. Kentucky's a sharp red state. Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, the guy leading the repeal against Obamacare, was asked, would you get rid of Kentucky's Obamacare, called Kentucky
Well,
Net?
it's not called, you're right, it's not called Obamacare.
It's called Kentucky Net in Kentucky.
Right.
And he said, no, it's helped a lot of people.
Right.
And they said, that's Obamacare. Oh, I repeal Obamacare.
Right.
So he's relying on people being ignorant.
That's beautiful marketing and messaging, by the way. And
Relying on people's ignorance.
Jeff and I have talked about this. It's how you sell your ideas to people. And there's a difference between the two parties. The Democrats, I will go out on a limb and say we are very cerebral and we care about facts. I don't think the other side really does in terms of it's about winning. And if you can have that situation where you have the same solution called Obamacare in this state or other state, and it's called something different, that's a branding. That's okay.
The irony is that I know on my radio show, I have people from Kentucky call in, people who told me they hated Obamacare until they saw its implementation in Kentucky, and people got health care for the first time in their lives, and they love it so much that the head of the Republican Party in the Senate is afraid to actually change it in Kentucky.
But see, that's our problem as Democrats. We don't attack and we don't call out the folks that do that sort of thing.
Another dynamic here, though, is that the people who can be most helped by these programs you're talking about don't vote.
But that's the other thing.
Look at the numbers.
Yeah, during these off
I don't know that too many people watching our show are undecided. I suspect people watching our show are partisans, partisan Democrats, partisan Republicans. And my question is, why aren't Democrats voting this year? We're tired after 6 years of the same president? Is it? Because it seems that after 6 years, any president, by the way, whether it's Bill Clinton or George Bush, they seem to have a hard time. They call it the 6th year itch. People just decide, I don't need to vote.
Yeah, well, it's more difficult to get people excited about voting for something that they kind of support versus getting them fired up about something they really hate. And for the Republicans, they still have Obama, the president, as a target.
Yes, he's a boogeyman. When we come back, I want to deal with the Northern Virginia congressional race, the 8th congressional district race. I actually ran in the primary of that race. Didn't win the primary, but Don Beyer is running. He's the Democrat, and we have actually, I think, an independent coming in to get grilled by us. So we'll find that out after the break. If you want to call in, folks, please do. Back after this.
Art. A universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff Barnett. Now we're here on the election eve talking about tomorrow's midterms elections, talking with Mark Levine, who ran in the 8th District in the primary this year, and Cesar del Aguila of Herndon, who was former chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. The 8th Congressional District goes from Arlington down into Prince William County.
It doesn't actually hit Prince William. It goes to the border. It's the border of Fairfax and Prince William.
A D plus 16, so a nominal Democrat can beat a nominal Republican, usually by 16 percentage points. One of the bluest districts in the country. Don Beyer versus Micah Edmond. And also we're going to have an independent candidate. Gwen Beck will be in with us in a few minutes.
Can we show the map up on the screen for the listeners so they can see if they're in the 8th Congressional District?
I think it's on the screen right now.
Good.
Arlington, Fairfax, and Alexandria. About half of it's in Fairfax County. When you were walking the 8th, okay, what were people talking about?
You know, they talked about the economy, but they talked about everything. They talked about schools. They talked about civil rights for women. They talked about immigrants. They talked about unemployment. They talked about unions. I talked about... I heard everything. I mean, some people talked about marijuana. Some talked about guns. Some talked about women's right to choose. I really heard a wide variety of topics.
Yeah, is that pretty much what you found in Herndon also?
Oh, sure. Full disclosure, I was a supporter financially of Mark Levine, just for the folks out there. I wrote him a check, so I wanted to make sure everyone knew about that.
Jeff Barnett. I
thought we had
I have my
financial disclosure.
To my left and my right here.
Full financial disclosure here.
I
just want to make sure everyone...
because I have so much respect for both of you, so to have you support me meant a lot. It very much did.
Pleasure. Good cause. I think Northern Virginia, just like the 8th, the 11th, and certainly the 10th, the economy, jobs, our proximity to the federal government, I mean, that has a huge impact on the economy here locally. So that's, I think, what people are really talking about.
Two more things people mentioned. Federal workforce, lots of protections for the federal workforce, particularly in time of sequester when people were being so mistreated. And transportation issues, because we're growing very, very fast. Right. And people wanted to make sure that we had the highways and also an extension of the yellow or the blue line to help people travel.
You know, really, when you talk about federal workforce, that's not something that I hear very much. Mm-hmm. I don't see it. I don't see it in the newspapers.
They care about it in the 8th, absolutely.
Well, what do they care about?
I think they care about, first of all, the fact that the federal workforce hasn't gotten wage increases when the rest of the economy has. I mean, the rest of the economy is growing. We talked about that, but due to the Republicans in Congress, we've had this sequester that has really kept down the federal workforce. And that means that people don't get the attention they need from the federal government. I'll just give you an example. I filed my taxes. I filed them late because I was running in April, but I got an extension till October, so I just filed them. I called the IRS because I had a question about the proper way to report something. Nobody answered. It's a recording. It's basically figure it out for yourself. It didn't used to be that way. Right. You used to be able to call in. You get a knowledgeable person who said, you know what, you report it this way because I want to file my taxes. I want to do it right. I had to give my best guess. I hope I'm not audited. But I really think I did. I think I did it right. I looked very carefully, but at the same time, we used to have that kind of access. Obviously, whether it's a Social Security check or Medicare check, or whether it's needing a judge because you've got a case that's important. But whatever it is, in the federal government you need, people are suffering, people are cutting back. Maybe it's your library hours or your national parks. People use the federal government in all kinds of different ways, and they're all getting cut back. So it's not just the federal workers that are hurt, but the people served by them, which is all of us.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference, quite frankly, between the two parties. If you had to show the comparison, one party actually values the services of what government can provide to make people's lives better. The other side would have you out there doing everything on your own, from churning your own butter to paving your own streets to paying for your own police force.
Yeah, every time you turn the corner, you'd pay a toll on a private toll road.
I mean, that's not what a civilized society is about. And I think at some point you need to start asking the other side, what are you willing to invest in? For the long term, what do you value in terms of the services that the government can provide?
Well, Micah Edmond is the Republican candidate. Has that been his message in the 8th?
I haven't heard much of his message, to be honest with you.
Actually, it's been so much noise that I think the Buyer folks have done a great job of drowning out his campaign. And not noise in the sense that it's a bad thing, but we're getting so much more messaging from the Democrats than you have been the Republicans.
Part of the reason, of course, is because Virginia's so gerrymandered. I mean, if Virginia were fairly divided, there's 11 congressional seats. Virginia's a blue state. We just elected a Democratic governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. We have 2 Democratic senators. But of the 11 seats, we only have 3 of the 11 members of Congress. Now, if you divide up Virginia fairly, Democrats have 6, Republicans probably have 5. I mean, it's a close state, even if it leans Democratic. But because of the way the Republicans have divided up and drawn all the Democrats, and I love my Democrats in the 8th, but I'd be willing to share them with the rest of the state so we could have elections that better reflect the state.
Yeah, think about what you said, too. It's a plus 16 blue. We call that for the folks out there. That's the way they lean. It leans blue, red. Very few are 50-50 in terms of the performance on a given election. It's not just a Virginia problem. That is a country problem.
Right.
That you have electeds picking their voters. Hey, you're a Republican. I'll trade you these precincts because they're red for these precincts that are blue. What have I just done? I've shored up my next election.
The voters don't choose the politicians. The politicians choose the voters.
Bingo.
That's a real problem in our democracy. And I would hope that we could all, Democrat and Republican, come together and have non-partisan districting. Yeah. Districting that ensured as close to 50-50 Republicans and Democrats as possible, and then let the battle of ideas win.
That's how you get stuff done.
Yeah, and we're going to have to redistrict here in Virginia because of a court case.
Correct.
I think it's the 3rd congressional district. But it may
Bobby Scott's district. They basically put all the African Americans in one district.
It may just be a trade-off between the 3rd and the 4th districts, or this could get wild, and it could get opened up. I would recommend that you take a look at Iowa. Look at their congressional districts, and they are it's very geometric.
Yeah, each corner of the state. They have 4 members of Congress, and they're all competitive districts.
Compare that with Maryland. Yeah. Which is there are some districts there that are just connected by a highway.
Right. Or there's Florida nothing. Or North Carolina or Pennsylvania.
Or Austin, Texas.
There you
go. Look at that. Somebody earlier was saying it looks like an asterisk.
Well, it's split into 5 sections. That way they get no Democratic representative.
They dilute
in a very liberal area. I think our guest is ready. Gwendolyn Beck is here, the independent running for the 8th congressional seat. If Micah Edmonds hasn't gotten much media attention, I'm sure Gwendolyn Beck has gotten very little.
Welcome to our show.
But we are very glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Please slide in. We don't bite.
Okay.
There's giving the thumbs up. Okay.
Well, Gwen, I'm Jeff Barnett.
Hi, Jeff. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Well, what do you expect to have happen tomorrow?
Well, I think it's going to be a very exciting day. I know that some polls have been taken, that people have been called for the polls, but the polls haven't been released, which, of course, is very good news for me. So I'm expecting very good results. I think that the American population is tired of the gridlock in Congress and what's been happening with the Republicans and the Democrats, and they're ready to send an independent to help them break the gridlock and to help get Congress working again.
How would you be different from Don Beyer and Micah Edmonds?
Well, I'm not beholden to a party. So if you vote for Micah, he's going to be beholden to the Republican Party. He is a pro-life endorsed by the Tea Party Republican. And Don Beyer is very close to President Obama and his policies. So on my campaign, we have the disappointed Democrats, the moderate Republicans, and the middle-of-the-road independents. So I'm going to be different because I'm going to be able to build the coalitions that we need. Because in Congress right now, it's so close with the Republicans and the Democrats, and there's not one independent there. And if there is an independent there, they're going to have to work with that person to get their vote, and it's going to cause the two sides to work together. And that's what I'm hoping to do, to bring them together.
On your website, what you talk about is fiscal responsibility, that being your number one issue. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about that a little bit for how, I guess, balancing the federal budget How would you like to do
Well,
that?
on the issue of balancing the federal budget, I think that the federal budget is like a household budget. Some years you're going to have excess money, some years you're going to be even, and then some years you're going to have something big product that you need to buy. So let's say in your home, if you buy a car or a refrigerator, you're going to go into debt. And I think we're in that situation, except for with the U.S. government, we do things like go to war, and that puts us in debt. But think about the late 90s. We had a surplus in the federal government and our debt, and that was because of the internet. We had so much money coming in. We had a great new product, and we were going around the world selling it. So we did have excess money. And so I think we need to balance our budget the same way we would our household budget. I don't think we can back ourselves into a quarter and say we're going to absolutely balance it in 10 years or 15 years.
So one thing we did is we went to war,
right?
But we cut taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The average family wouldn't necessarily purchase a house and stop working. So how would you rank our priorities in terms of investing? What's your highest priority investment that you would want to see?
Education.
Good.
Education.
Okay.
We need to create jobs, and we need to fix our infrastructure. And I think that an infrastructure bank is the right way to go. And that idea has been put on the table before, and it's a great idea. But again, we're in a Congress that's not getting anything done. Mm-hmm. There are all of these fabulous ideas and simple things that we can do to fix our economy and to make us stronger and to make us better and to get us back to work. And we're just
now to help the infrastructure and education and all these things that liberals want, but liberals are willing to spend for them. You want to cut back. What would you cut?
Well, I think what we need to cut is the stupid spending. I mean, we spend a lot of money.
On what?
Well, let's see. The F-35 program is the largest acquisition on the planet, in the world, at $1 trillion, and it's not working very well. So we have a lot of money there. I think at the end of the day, they're going to fix the F-35 program, but there's a lot of money there. There was $1 billion spent on the rollout for the Affordable Care Act. $1 billion, and then they went and fixed it. How? By calling one of our great companies in the United States of America to come in and fix it. We need to get rid of the things that are just stupid money. And government workers are the first people to stand up and say, hey, even what I'm doing really doesn't need to be done. We have, let's say in the Department of Agriculture.
So would you cut the federal workforce?
No, I don't think that's necessary to do that at all. I think we need to shift them around, and I think we need to start listening to the federal worker. I think that they don't get enough credence for what they do because they are fabulous workers. But look at their management. I mean, Congress and POTUS is their management. So they're constantly dealing with whoever the next political appointee is that doesn't know what they're doing. And we need to fix these problems. I mean, we look at the Department of Agriculture. There is a department there that gets the crop reports from Australia. Do you know they still, in 2014, fly to Australia to get the crop reports? And all they need to do is call Australia. In fact, today we could probably Google it. And they're the first person to say, we probably don't need this. So we can fix this easily.
Well, and it was easy talking with you. Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you.
And the best of luck to you.
Good luck
tomorrow. Thank you very much.
And I'm sure
coming on.
You had a great time out on the doors.
Oh, it's great. I love the people of the 8th District of Virginia. It's just fabulous.
We all do.
Yes.
We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Yes.
To smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice. Hole is mine. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent. Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Welcome back. I'm with Mark Levine and Jeff Barnett, and we're going to finish up our discussion on the 8th. So we met the candidate, Gwen. Who else is left in this race, Mark?
Don Byer's the guy that beat me,
yeah.
so I probably know the most about him. I really didn't know Don Byer prior to this race. I met him during the race. We had some differences. Obviously, I wouldn't have run if we didn't have some differences. But let me say this about Don Byer. He's a very smart person. I think he's a very dedicated person. And I think that he stands for most of the democratic values that I stand for. Again, we had some differences, but I think he will stand up and vote a solid blue vote. And if you are a Democrat and you care about that in this district we talked about, D+16, you're going to want a Democrat to represent you.
Yeah, my impression of him over the years is I don't know that he's beholden to anyone. I think he's got a mind of his own. He's going to do what he thinks is right for his constituents. I think he's an independent thinking kind of guy. Obviously, he's a Democrat, so we share those values, but I don't think there's anyone telling him what to do.
Do you guys have any ideas as to, we throw around these numbers, D+10, D+16, R+4. Why is the 8th, what about it makes it a Democratic district?
If I can take a first shot at it.
Oh, you go.
Let me tell you
That's
why.
a great question.
Well, first of all, I think it comes down to the density and the diversity equals Democrat. So DDD, right? I just made that up. I hope you like it.
I like it.
I want to trademark
3D.
that. Yeah.
We'll call it 3D.
3D. I want $5 for any time anyone uses that. Here's the thing, because when you have more density, you have more ethnically diverse people, especially the proximity to the city, mass transit. You have all these things converging. That just makes people a little bit more open to their fellows, their ideas. So that, to me, means Democrat. When you have the density and the diversity, that's where you have the Democratic district.
So let me follow on. I completely agree with Cesar. I think what density means, when a lot of people live in close proximity to each other, they need government more. They need government to sort out mass transportation, high rises, rents. Yep. You care about the environment. If you live in the city, you want to make sure that your water's clean. You want to make sure, and diversity. Democrats have always stood up for people of all diversities, whether it's black, white, Latino, whether it's gay, straight, whether it's women's rights. Democrats, if you look at the southern Virginia, you find much more rural areas, much more areas that live the same way they did 50, 100 years ago, which is a very conservative idea. And so I think that absolutely. I think that with density, diversity, I couldn't have said it better. 3D.
I'm going to give you credit for the 3D because I didn't tie that all together.
Well, there you go. So we're working together.
We'll share the equity on that.
But the closest race in Northern Virginia is not the 8th. The closest race is the 10th congressional district between John Faust and Barbara Comstock. You ran in the 10th against Frank Wolf, who had represented for many, many years. Very tough race against a long-standing incumbent. Now there's no incumbent, but it's still a district. Well, tell me about the 10th district.
Well, first, after our race, Frank and I talked, and Frank said that he thought that he and I ran the most positive race in the country. That's not what we've seen.
No.
In this case.
The Comstock-Faust race has been ugly.
And that's very unfortunate. The 10th is a marvelous district. It is what's called an R+4. So again, a nominal Republican, will defeat a nominal Democrat by 4 percentage points. When I ran, it was R+2. But the gerrymandering that happened,
that's right.
Every Democratic precinct in Fairfax County that I won transferred mostly to Jerry Connolly.
Right.
And
to the 11th.
Right.
Is he running unopposed, Jerry Connolly?
Pretty much. No, he has.
I haven't heard of his opponent.
Let me take that back.
I'm not worried about Jerry Connolly.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, that he's still out there. You know, Jerry, he's the James Brown of the Congress, right? He's out there working, knocking on doors, getting his message out. He will win that race.
Well, right. Jerry has spent $1 million on this race thus far, and he has another $2 million in the bank.
Wow.
So he's kind of put out the word to people that he's not taking this for granted.
Right. And you shouldn't.
And so
look what happened to Eric Cantor, guys.
Right, that's true.
Excellent.
Majority leader of the Republican Party and still lost the primary.
But the difference is, Congressman Connolly, he is at every public event in his district.
He is ubiquitous.
Oh, he talks to everyone.
He was at most of our events, and
that's what I mean.
But let's get back to the 10th, because this is the closest race in all of Virginia.
Right.
It's even probably closer than the Senate race. Tell me about John Faust. Tell me about Barbara Comstock. This is your home.
Right. This race, the 10th district, was won by Cuccinelli by 1 point over Governor McAuliffe. Mm-hmm. It was won by Mitt Romney by 1 point.
Tough for Democrats.
Over Obama.
But just barely tough for Democrats.
Well, yes, but again, I would assert to you that Terry McAuliffe was a pretty middle-of-the-road Democrat, and Mr. Cuccinelli was
pretty far-right Republican.
Right, and that was a very close race in the 10th Congressional District. I'll give you another example. The western part of the district is in the valley, Shenandoah Valley. Yep. So there you're talking Frederick County.
Beautiful area, by the way.
It's a marvelous area. In fact, you go out there for the Apple Blossom Festival, big parade. The Apple Blossom apple industry used to be very big out there. That's another one of those industries that's been globalized, really out of existence. But anyway, still got a great parade. I'm sorry, I lost my little train of thought here.
We're in the Shenandoah Valley, the district, western.
E.W. Jackson, who ran against Ralph Northam there for lieutenant governor, he won that area.
That's hard to believe, because he was very extreme.
He was very extreme. He said yoga was a form of Satanism. And here's Ralph Northam,
I shouldn't laugh because
a Gulf War veteran, a VMI graduate who was president
of the Honor
Court.
He didn't win the 10th. He just won that part of the 10th.
He won that part of the 10th.
The very western part, the Winchester area.
So this is a very difficult race area for a Democrat to win.
Let's talk about the candidates, though, because we have people in the 10th who are watching today. Tell us, who is John Faust, who is Barbara Comstock?
Well, John Faust is the county supervisor for the McLean, Great Falls area and Herndon, called the Drainesville area. And he's done a marvelous job there, been on a job there for 7 years now. Heads a budget committee at a very difficult time in Fairfax for balancing the budget, and he's done so. Yep. He's the kind of guy with whom I have just the highest respect, even at a fundraiser at my house, because I know he's extraordinarily honest and he gets things done. In this campaign, as far as I can see, he's made one slip-up. And that was when he was talking about the fact that Delegate Comstock had never had a job outside of politics. She's a lobbyist. That's her job, and being a mom at home, and those are both important jobs. John mischaracterized it, and that's been I think blown out of proportion.
I've seen about 100 ads about that.
On the other hand, we have Delegate Comstock, who has a difficult record.
What is her record?
She voted against the transportation bill.
She was at the Metro opening picture-taking ceremony.
Of course, she was.
But she was against expanding the Metro,
which was a bipartisan bill that was fostered by.
So if you take the Silver Line, that's no thanks to Barbara Comstock.
She's
correct.
She voted for the transvaginal ultrasound bill. She's in favor of personhood.
Let's just stop that for a second, because you roll that off so quickly. It's hard to say because it's kind of a disgusting thing. But Barbara Comstock voted to require the government to stick something inside a woman against her will if she wanted an abortion, some non-medically necessary step.
Correct.
Just to try to convince her not to have it.
Correct.
Talk about invasiveness. I mean, and not just. There's nothing more invasive than that. It's almost. I don't want to use the word rape, but let's just say it's government penetration against a woman's will, and Barbara Comstock voted for that.
Yep.
But again, we get that.
It's so shocking, it's hard to even say.
But see, what you just described is the difficulty Democrats have getting their message out.
Right.
And because you tell the truth, and it sounds like you're being disgusting.
Again, because we're facing an area here where people do, as we were saying before, they have job fear. Medium incomes are under attack, and especially in the western part of the district. And so they're looking for an economic message. Right. And from the Democratic Party, they really don't see an economic message. Right. And so it's working class people in the western part of the district that the Democrats have lost.
Correct. And that's the majority of the district.
And should President Obama be doing something different in this election? I mean, he's kind of staying away from the close districts. He's raising money. Could he be making this economic message better?
I don't think in the 10th, if we're talking about the 10th, no. I would say he's done enough.
Or even across the country. I mean, I haven't heard him talk much.
I think that's absolutely mandatory. I think he has to. I think Jim Webb is making it. Jim Webb is saying that the Democratic Party has the back of the working family. That's job one. Mm-hmm. He's making that message. I heard Al Franken making that message, running for re-election as senator in Minnesota. In Oregon, making that message.
Jeff Markley.
And I think if you're making that message, that resonates with people. They need to know that you have their back on their number one issue, that you hold them number one. However, we have been tarred, Democrats have been tarred as being the liberal party, right, with Republicans being the conservative party.
I don't see liberal as a bad word. Liberal to me means looking out for working class people, believing in the American dream, believing in equal opportunity. I don't see it as a bad word.
America is a center-right country, and twice as many people self-identify with being conservative and with being liberal. If you get a whole crowd of people and you said, are you conservative or liberal, twice as many people will say conservative.
Do you think we should give up trying to reclaim the name?
I think what you do is a rebrand. Let me tell you, if you're a corporation, progressive, you're for progress. You are for progressing our country forward.
For progressing the middle class, the working family.
There you go. That's the type of messaging that's not done.
And then you show how Obamacare fits under that. Then you show how clean
I think you show a sick child, and you say, should this child have a chance to live or not? Democrats believe that this child with leukemia should get health care. Republicans don't think she should.
We're too cerebral to do that.
Show a dirty river and say Democrats want to clean it up. Sure. Republicans want to pollute it further. Sure. I mean, look at West Virginia with the company Freedom Industries that ruined the water supply for everybody. Republicans support lack of regulation. Give specific examples. That's what I want to do.
Well, that all span from the middle class.
There you go. There you go. So when we come back, we'd love to take your calls, 571-749-1166, as we conclude and tell you to get out to vote tomorrow.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me. There's more than just books at the library.
Il y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
There's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine, joined with my wonderful co-host, the former chair of the Democratic Party in Fairfax County, Cesar del Aguilar, the former candidate in the 10th Congressional District, Jeff Barnett. My three colleagues, it's wonderful doing a show with the two of you because
Glad to be here.
So I wanted to ask you, since you're the expert on all things 10th Congressional District, a little bit more about, we talked about John Faust, a little bit more about Barbara Comstock. She was a lobbyist. Who was she a lobbyist for, John?
Well, she is a lobbyist. I mean, that's how she makes her living. And again, as a member of the House of Delegates, that's only a part-time job. I think it pays, $17,000 a year. You have to have a job. And so her job is as a lobbyist. And
so she works in the Virginia legislature at the same time as she's lobbying for people who have business in the Virginia legislature?
And that's the problem.
You wouldn't think that would be legal.
Well, what Virginia does is Virginia has very lax laws.
As long as you disclose it.
And it puts it up to the people to kind of hold their elected officials accountable.
Do people even know? Who does she lobby for?
Well, that is a problem. One of the people for whom she lobbies is called the Workforce Fairness Institute, which is an industry group that is anti-union, in essence. She's taken from them over the past few years somewhere between $160,000 and $300,000 or $360,000 from these people. So it's not a small amount of money.
So she uses that to try to lower workers' wages, to try to make their working conditions worse.
Well, the problem
to try to
is
make it harder for ordinary Virginians.
Which is her right to do. Is her right to do.
Her right to do,
okay?
But people should know that she does it.
That's the problem. She did not disclose it. That's the problem. She did not disclose it. And so it's, we can all say, look, that's your profession and that's what you believe, fine. But when you take money from these people and put it in your pocket, we're not talking about money that goes into your campaign fund. Money that goes directly into your pocket. And then you take their legislative initiatives and you submit them as your own and they're passed.
So they basically own her.
And you don't...
So if you think that working class people need to get less wages, if you think that their jobs are too easy, if you think that they need tougher working conditions and they need to spend more time away from their families and not have time off, if you are against overtime, if you think that people need to work weekends, vote for Barbara Comstock.
Well, Barbara also took $85,000 from the Romney campaign as an advisor to them. And again, she is a partisan lobbyist, and that's what she does. But again, she didn't disclose it. And that's part of this troubling message or theme with Delegate Comstock, where she's taking the money and not disclosing it. And the question is, are people going to hold her accountable for that? And right now, according to the polls, that's not going to happen.
Well, hopefully people will get out and vote tomorrow and make a difference.
It has been extraordinary, the ground game that the Democrats are doing in the 10th. It's something that I've never seen before.
It's good.
If you go to, let's say, the McLean office and you said, hey, I'd like to go out and canvass for you, they'll tell you, well, all of the packets are done. We don't have anything. Go somewhere else. They've had an extraordinary ground outfit. So, these polls, people who are behind, always say, well, the polls are suspect. But in this case, it's possible that is very much the case.
It's just a question, will people turn out? I mean, do you care who represents you in government? One of the things that I always get that really drives me crazy, particularly in my race where 8% of registered voters voted, 8, no, not 18, 8, is that I heard so many people constantly complain about the government. Congress is terrible. I agree Congress is terrible, but if you don't vote for your member of Congress, how can you complain about Congress at all? I mean, it just seems to me in a democracy, you want to complain about your government, vote, and then complain all you want.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people will be complaining about their government in this election because they're holding President Obama culpable for what they see is going wrong in the country. You may not agree with that, but in a lot of these elections at this level, it's not the person who's running. It's the very top of the ticket.
People are trying to send a message.
How many people in 2006 voted against? How many people in 2006 voted against
George
President
W.
Bush?
No question. But to be fair to the president, in all the close Senate races, and I know you've been studying them, Jeff, you'll find that the closest races, the races where Democrats are likely to lose, where are they? They're in West Virginia, they're in Montana, they're in Arkansas, they're in Louisiana, they're in Alaska. They're all in states that voted for Mitt Romney by 10 to 14 points. The senatorial candidates are actually running better than Romney did in 2012 because they're 4 points behind, 5 points behind. That's still not good enough to win. But I wonder if we do lose tomorrow, if people call it a wave election, if they'll note the fact that South Dakota has always been a red state.
So we'll
Montana's
know,
a red state.
We'll know based upon North Carolina,
which is a red state.
We'll know Kentucky,
red state.
That will tell us whether or not there's going to be this wave of the Republicans.
Show the map. I fear we're going to lose Montana, South Dakota, and West Virginia. People have already sort of written off.
Right.
Arkansas and Louisiana are going to be tough. Again,
because we've got two great Democratic candidates there, Mark Pryor and Mary Landrieu. They're running very good races.
And I think Mark Begich is running an exceptional race in Alaska. He's going to every last Aleutian island, it appears, and hunting down people. But those are all very red states. It's tough for a Democrat to do well in those states. I think Kate Hagan will pull it off in North Carolina. But again, it's a red state. Really, the only blue states that are close are New Hampshire and Colorado. And those are purple states. Those are states that tend to vote for George Bush and also vote for Barack Obama. So there aren't really any solid blue states that we're worried about. And I just wonder when people write about this election if they'll remember, I think 2014 is a tough year for Democrats, and Democrats really have to get out and vote, particularly because of that.
But then the question is, when we're back to the original thing, why is this a tough year for Democrats? Because you look at many of the indicators for the economy, and you understand why the economy is bad to begin with, because it wasn't George W. Bush, it was Republican policies of
President
war,
Obama needs to get out there
deregulation.
and say, are you better off than you were 6 years ago? Why isn't he using the old Reagan trick? Are you better off than you were 6 years ago? The vast majority of Americans are better off than they were in 2008.
But he's not doing that, and he's a very smart guy with very good advisors. Why isn't he doing it?
Well, I think they've instructed him, hey, your approval numbers are way down, all-time low. You're probably not going to help some of these close
I think
races.
part of this is just sort of a general malaise. You know, ISIS is an ugly, horrible thing. Ebola is an ugly, horrible thing. You know, Vladimir Putin, he's a pretty ugly, horrible thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on completely outside the United States. Europe actually is practicing the Republican policies of austerity to cut back, to balance the budget, like Gwen Smith said. Europe has practiced those policies, and they're about to undergo their third recession. And the reason why the United States stock market is so strong, frankly, is because we're the only country on earth that handled the financial crisis so well. Europe's in crisis, Japan, China, the rest of the world.
We saved the auto industry from going belly up. That was President Obama.
When politicians keep saying, hey, I created X thousand jobs, million jobs, whatever, in good times, then you got to expect you're going to get the blame in the bad times. And I think the fact is that government in a capitalistic society does not create jobs. The private sector does.
But government creates the foundation, the environment to allow them to create these jobs.
And
if your bridges are falling apart and your roads are collapsing, it's very hard to get to truck your stuff from one
But that is a long lead time effort.
Sure.
And that's part of the problem, too. I think the culture of this country, for a number of reasons, and we'll do another show on this, the attention span of the average voter is that. And if you cannot convey what you stand for, what the value of your presence in that environment, the arena, the Congress, the Senate, or the presidency is, you're not going to get their support. In fact, you'll lose their support, and that speaks to the apathy. There's just so many distractions out there.
I don't think many people are watching. I don't think many people are interested. I don't think many people know there's an election tomorrow. I mean, I haven't.
Unfortunately, you're right.
I mean, the presidential election, everybody knows.
Right.
And I don't hear many people saying, I am excited to vote in the midterm. So my question for our listeners is, are you excited to get out and vote? One of the things Republicans are doing across the nation, right here in Virginia, is making it really hard to vote. They're requiring a photo ID. Yep. And let me just tell a story from my campaign that really drives it home. Because I think for those of us that have a driver's license, we think, well, why doesn't everyone have a driver's license? Let me tell you a story about a campaign worker who I have not paid. I haven't closed my election campaign down yet. I owe this guy $700. Why haven't I paid him? I wrote him a check way back in May. He hasn't cashed my check because he doesn't have a picture ID. He went to try to get a picture ID, and they said, you need a birth certificate. He went to get a birth certificate, and they said, you need a picture ID. This man, this young man, 22 years old, born in Washington, D.C., as American as apple pie, cannot legally get an ID. He cannot legally work. He has to find odd jobs. He wants to do the right thing. He doesn't have a clear place of residence. He's struggling. And he's got $700, and then actually my lawyer said I can't pay him in cash because the FEC doesn't want me to pay him in cash. I'm in a bind, but more importantly, this guy who worked very hard for me can't take, and I think if he can't get an ID to get $700, this person who could use the money, how much harder to get an ID to vote? This guy can't vote. He's lost his right to vote, and it's not his fault that he's poor. You know, if you're middle class, your parents go in with you when you're 16, you get a driver's license like mine did, it's really easy. But if you're like this guy, and so now the Republicans are basically saying to, 10% of Virginians don't have a photo ID? Something like that?
At least 300,000.
Okay. That's 300,000 people. The Republicans have said, sorry, forget this Constitution here. You don't get a right to vote. The Constitution doesn't apply to you. And this idea that they can just write people off, I find it offensive.
Yeah, well, I think it's a tactic. If you're losing some of the arguments on the merits, then you try to limit the number of people that are going to vote. If you have more people voting, more representation at the ballot box,
including poor people, including young people, including the elderly who can't get out of their house.
Bingo.
Former Speaker Jim Wright, I forget how old he is. I think he's in his 80s or his 90s. He let his driver's license lapse in Texas. This is the former Speaker of the House. He went to vote. They wouldn't let him vote.
Again, you have to understand where they're coming from. That explains their behavior. They are under the impression there is widespread voter fraud.
But they're not, because all the statistics show that's not true.
Well,
they can't believe it, because there's something like 5 cases of in-person voter fraud in the last century in America.
So what happens is people conflate registration fraud,
which does exist,
with actual Mickey Duck voting at the ballot box.
When you believe that you're right, you believe you're then empowered to do whatever it takes.
Exactly.
At the end justifies the means.
Right.
And again, I think that there are a lot of Republicans who honestly believe that they are right. They believe in trickle-down economics. They believe the best way to help the country is to have lower taxes and less government. If we did all of that, we'd be fine. And then they take from that, and now I think everything else kind of falls into line for them.
But the difference is, who are the lower taxes for? Democrats support lower taxes, but they support lower taxes for everyone, not just the super rich. And that's the difference. And that's the difference in Democratic and Republican policy.
And we want everyone to vote, by the way.
The election is tomorrow. Show the legislature that you can vote, even though they don't want you to vote. Show them up. Exercise your democratic rights. Get out to vote. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if they tell you can't vote, you call me, you call anyone. Democrat or Republican Party, you make sure you get your right to vote. On behalf of Cesar del Aguila and Jeff Barnett, I'm Mark Levine. Thank you for watching.